please.
Author R.L. Stine made his youth horror book series Goosebumps a household name in the early 90s, with the original series, Series 2000, the Give Yourself Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure stories, and other Goosebumps-related works. The television show, Disney attraction, and merchandise also helped push Goosebumps further into the mainstream. Following an intense legal battle, Stine would finally be able to produce a new series under the Goosebumps umbrella. A Goosebumps series that might just be my favorite. Hi, I'm Matt Braxton, and if Goosebumps was a big part of your childhood as it was mine, join me as I take a look back at Horrorland's inception, the artwork and design of the series, the characters and monsters, the 25 books and interconnected plots, video games based off the series including Scholastic's lost web player game Enter Horrorland, and series merchandise. Enter the gates of Horrorland if you dare. You're in for a scare. Without further ado, here's my look back at Goosebumps Horrorland. The lawsuits filed by both Parachute Press, the publishing company co-led by R.L. Stine's wife Jane Stine, and Scholastic, over the rights to the Goosebumps franchise and revenue losses due to missed business opportunities, led directly to the demise of the Goosebumps 2000 book series. Originally, the series was slated to have 40 books, but was cut down to just 25. In fact, the artwork for the 26th book, The Incredible Shrinking Fifth Grader, had already been commissioned and produced by Tim Jacobus, as well as the majority of the written manuscript from Stine, who went on to alter the story to become a standalone book, The Adventures of Shrinkman. The lawsuits also interfered with the production of a Goosebumps movie, set to be directed by Tim Burton, which, as a lifelong Goosebumps fan, I would have loved to see how Burton's twisted visions could intertwine with such spooky and occasionally campy characters to make a truly special piece of film. Following the abrupt ending to the Goosebumps 2000 book series, Stine began working on a new series with the HarperCollins publishing company called Goosebumps Gold. Tim Jacobus, the cover illustrator for the original Goosebumps series, Series 2000, and various other Goosebumps-related works, was once again commissioned to create cover art for the new series. Jacobus completed two of the three, The Haunted Mask Lives and Happy Holidays from Deadhouse, and shared early rough drafts for Slappy New Year. Man, as a quick aside, I am not a fan of how Slappy's design changed over the years. He went from being genuinely spooky to being more goofy looking to looking like an alien, back to looking horrifying, and now, The movie Slappy design being used for the book was a cool tie-in, but he just isn't scary. Go back to making Slappy actually horrifying, please. Anyways, there's a running theory amongst fans that because the first book in the series, The Haunted Mask Lives, was originally set to release in October 2000, the fact that there were 12 books slated for the series, and the other publicly released titles were widely celebrated holidays, that each book in the Goosebumps Gold series would have to do with a holiday for each month. Unfortunately, likely due to rights disputes, the series would never be published, and according to Stine, the books were never written. The Slappy New Year title, however, would be reworked into a Goosebumps Horrorland entry a decade later. In 2003, Scholastic agreed to purchase the rights to the Goosebumps series for just over $9.5 million. Following the purchase, Scholastic reprinted 57 of the original 62 Goosebumps books between the years 2003 and 2007. The only books not to receive these reprints were Phantom of the Auditorium, Legend of the Lost Legend, I Live in Your Basement, Werewolf Skin, and Monster Blood 4. This is likely due to low original sales numbers and the fact that the majority of the books to not receive reprints were toward the very end of the series, so it might not have made financial sense to reprint a book that was only around 5 years old. Interestingly, because only 2 of the original 62 Goosebumps books were not illustrated by Tim Jacobus, he was commissioned to replace the artwork for the reprints. The reprints used different fonts, slightly altered the Goosebumps logo, as well as the back cover format, and used different color combinations. Also edited the books to fix mistakes, and in some cases, update some aspects for a more modern audience. In 2008, the 2003 to 2007 reprint format was discontinued in favor of a new reprint series and design, Classic Goosebumps, to come out alongside R.L. Stine's and Scholastic's brand new series, Goosebumps Horrorland. Goosebumps Horrorland and Classic Goosebumps reprints were the very first Goosebumps mainline series, aside from Give Yourself Goosebumps, to not feature cover illustrations from Tim Jacobus. Scholastic instead chose Brandon Dorman to create the artwork for the new Horrorland series, and remakes of the original cover art for the Classic Goosebumps reprints. The reprints were much more dynamic than the original, feeling more fantastical. This is likely because Dorman specializes in fantasy art, such as his illustrations for the series The Land of Stories by Chris Colfer, known for his role as Kurt Hummel in the popular show Glee. While the fantastical reworkings of the original covers made for a more dynamic look, I can't help but prefer the originals in most cases, as they were more intimate and therefore more eerie. Not only were Jacobus's works more detailed in most cases, using a hand-drawn, hand-painted, and airbrush style, but Jacobus's characters for the most part appeared more realistic and chilling, while Dorman's looked clunkier and again, less scary aside from one character. Slappy. Dorman's version of Slappy, used in the classic reprints, Horrorland, and the Most Wanted series, was terrifying. It was perfect. This is Slappy. While I prefer Jacobus's works for the original series, and especially the original Goosebumps logo, Dorman's art for the Goosebumps Horrorland series, much like his design for Slappy, was amazing. This is Horrorland. While the dynamic, fantasy-inspired look for the original series reprints did not always work, it was perfect for the Horrorland series. Horrorland is a larger-than-life, horrifying, fantastical place, and the cover art for the Horrorland series is as well. Never before have we seen a perfectly illustrated version of Horrorland. The 90s show's envisioning of Horrorland was a much smaller scale, likely due to the low budget, and looked as if the park was a few buildings and attractions connected by pathways through the woods. While the original Horrorland game for the PC helped to make the fictional theme park feel more like a real theme park with shops and different parks like Vampire Village, this is the first time we see Horrorland as a massive, colorful, and scary theme park. In fact, you can connect all of the maps in the back of the books, or refer to the main map in the Enter Horrorland game, to see just how massive the park is, how many rides and horrifying attractions there are. And thanks to Dorman, the horrors, the rides, and Slappy himself have never felt so alive. So step through the gates of Horrorland and let's take a look at the monsters, villains, and other characters. The Goosebumps Horrorland series took inspiration from the predecessor series 2000 by again bringing back some familiar characters. While Series 2000 predominantly featured new characters, only occasionally going back to familiar faces like Slappy and Horrorland, the Horrorland series chose to more heavily feature the latter. There were many returning villains and characters, including Slappy from the Living Dummy quadrilogy, Billy and Sheena from the Deep Trouble books facing off against a new villain, Monster Blood, and The Haunted Camera. While most of the stories featuring returning villains and monsters showcase new main characters, there were also cases where both main characters and villains returned. The Scream of the Haunted Mask brought back Carly Beth and Sabrina, as well as, of course, the Haunted Mask. And the last two books in the first arc put Lizzie and Luke front and center, once again facing off against the threat of Horrorland. Interestingly, while Stine chose to include characters like Carly Beth and Sabrina, and Luke and Lizzie, along with their respective threats from the original series, there were many retcons included in this new series, The events of Scream of the Haunted Mask and Creep from the Deep each were said to have taken part 1 year after the events of Haunted Mask and Deep Trouble, respectively. This could not be possible in the original timeline, as the Haunted Mask 2 and Deep Trouble 2 took place a year after the initial stories. Therefore, only the original Haunted Mask and Deep Trouble entries appear to be canon in this series. Further, while the events of the Return to Horrorland book already retconned the events of the Escape Horrorland PC ROM game starring Lizzie and Luke, where Horrorland was destroyed, this Horrorland series also seems to retcon to some extent the events of Return to Horrorland and the origins of Horrorland itself. According to Goosebumps art on Reddit, in the first book, Horrorland is a theme park run by monsters. They film attendees to create content for other monsters to watch. In the Cap Collector's book, Horrorland started off as an ordinary traveling carnival. The carnival burned down, and the workers were all disfigured. They disappeared and started Horrorland. In the video game, the park was created by a madman named Madison Storm who wanted to be surrounded by creatures as weird as him. In Return to Horrorland, the park moves to Florida, indicating it might once again be a traveling pop-up circus. When recalling the events of One Day at Horrorland, Luke and Lizzie talk about the experience as if it was merely a horror-themed game show. It's unclear if they remember the actual monsters. They eventually discover that Horrorland exists to torture humans, and the horrors are willing to kill anyone who threatens to reveal this secret. In the Horrorland series, Panic Park was built by a madman completely different from Dr. Storm, named Karloff Menace, to create as much fear as possible. Panic Park was shut down in the 1970s for being too terrifying, and became trapped in a parallel 1970s universe. Horrorland, in the main world, was built in its place, and the Menace's goal is to return Panic Park to the real world through fear. In this story, fear is framed like a supernatural energy that's capable of warping universes, no doubt influenced by the Monsters, Inc. Scream containers. The Horrorland series featured many returning characters, monsters, and villains, as well as many retcons to classic Goosebumps stories, but also featured many brand new characters. One of the most prominent new characters was Dr. Maniac, a supervillain meant to replace the deceased masked mutant. Dr. Maniac would be featured once more in the Goosebumps Most Wanted series. There were other unique villains, such as the My Friends Call Me Monster alien teacher that sat on huge alien eggs until they hatched, Tuten Ra, an ancient Egyptian that survived for thousands of years thanks to a special recipe of mummy organs, Inspector Cranium and the Thought Police that attempted to drain the powers of kids that get special abilities, and in the latter half of the Horrorland series, the characters take home an item from the Chiller House gift shop, such as a tooth necklace, a two-headed coin, an Instagrow animal, and other cursed objects that cause problems back at home. Jonathan Chiller, the gift shop owner, was one of many new characters added into the Horrorland mythos. Other new Horrorland characters included the Monster Police, Byron, the horror that is believed to be helping the kids, the Menace, the literal two-faced owner of Panic Park, Madame Doom, and the Story Keeper. Whether Stein intended on playing on the nostalgia of his original core audience nearly 2 decades after the original Goosebumps series premiere, the Horrorland books were the perfect blend of new and old, familiar faces and well-rounded new ones, to keep fans new and old enthralled and ready to once again enter through the gates of the place where nightmares come to life.
Come families, come friends to a place that's grand. For fun and for thrills, visit Horrorland. With twists and turns and flips and spins, our rides are a riot, so strap yourself in. If your tummy is grumpy, please don't be shy. We've got oodles of tasty treats to try. So come for adventure and fantasy too. Your Horrorland friends will be waiting for you.
Goosebumps Horrorland books are not the first Goosebumps books to be interconnected, existing in the same world, but Horrorland is the first whole series that threads a storyline together, connecting each book in the whole series. Think of it as a Goosebumps cinematic universe, but for books. Around this series' release, I was in my early elementary school years, the perfect time for getting into Goosebumps, so it was awesome as a kid to have both Goosebumps and Scooby-Doo have an interconnected storyline come out around the same time, because it was like my favorite childhood properties were growing up, with more mature storytelling alongside me. The Goosebumps Horrorland series is made up of 2 separate arcs, with each book containing multiple stories. The first 10 books contain independent stories where the protagonist would have to survive a classic Goosebumps monster, like the Haunted Mask, or a new terror altogether. This section of the Horrorland series includes Revenge of the Living Dummy, Creep from the Deep, Monster Blood for Breakfast, Scream of the Haunted Mask, Dr. Maniac vs. Robbie Schwartz, Who's Your Mummy, My Friends Call Me Monster, Say Cheese and Die Screaming, Welcome to Camp Slither, and Help, We Have Strange Powers. And for the first time, along with the normal anthology style, the books included the secondary Enter Horrorland section towards the end of the book. In this section, each book's protagonist narrates their own Horrorland segment. They receive an invitation to Horrorland, and once inside the gates of the park, they typically experience a certain attraction or section in the park, usually involving a sort of rematch with the villain from the main story. In Monster Blood for Breakfast, for example, Matt has to help the other kids he meets from the other books survive a Monster Blood attack. And in Dr. Maniac vs. Robbie Schwartz, Robbie gets trapped inside a Dr. Maniac video game machine. And don't worry, Horrorland lives up to its name as well. Some classic attractions return, like the Bat Barn and Wolfsbane Forest, and the series features many new horrifying attractions and settings like the Black Lagoon Water Park and Stagger Inn. There are also a larger variety of horrors in this series, like the Monster Police, that are seemingly trying to stop Byron, another horror, from helping the kids escape. Byron warns the kids as they continue to grow more and more disturbed by the goings-on inside the, at first, seemingly harmless spooky theme park, that Horrorland is not what it seems. Brittany and Molly, the main characters from Revenge of the Living Dummy, go missing, and the kids quickly discover that they are able to see them through a piece of a shattered mirror. Mirrors, as they quickly find out, act as portals and they can enter Panic Park, where Brittany and Molly were taken to. This is why mirrors are banned from the Horrorland Park, so no one can escape. Throughout the books, Byron continuously warns the kids, the very special guests, that they are all in danger and need to, at any cost, escape Horrorland. Horrorland isn't just a theme park, it is where nightmares come to life. While this concept of escaping Horrorland is nothing new, and was even part of the plot of the original book, the Horrorland series ramped the concept up on a much larger scale, with a more intricate, question-raising, interconnected plot. The 11th and 12th books are not 2 independent stories like the previous 10, rather Escape from Horrorland and The Streets of Panic Park conclude the entire Enter Horrorland arc by having the kids all come together and face off against those responsible for making them all very special guests. It turns out that once the kids escape to Panic Park, they find out that Panic Park was what Horrorland used to be. By traveling through the mirror, they traveled through time and are now stuck in a grayscale 1974 world. See, there was a mole on their team that tricked them into coming to Panic Park, to be trapped there with the evil, literally two-faced villain, the Menace. The very special guests then have to work with all the villains like Slappy and Captain Ben to escape. This was truly the Avengers Endgame of the Goosebumps series. After the Streets of Panic Park concluded the Enter Horrorland storyline, and gave us my possible favorite Goosebumps cover art ever, Scholastic released the Horrorland Survival Guide book. The Survival Guide is a guidebook to Horrorland and all of its attractions, full of witty writing and warnings from Luke and Lizzie. I'm not 100% sure it's canon, but I like to think that the fear files from Luke and Lizzie that were displayed at the end of each Horrorland book culminated into this survival guide. like Luke and Lizzie gave you their guide to survive. While the book itself is absolutely not an essential read for the series, it is a neat piece to add to anyone's Goosebumps collection and helps expand the lore and world building of the scariest park on Earth. Books 13 through 19 have a separate arc from the first 12 in the Horrorland series. In the second arc, each book revolves around a kid purchasing and surviving some type of ghoulish gift from the Chiller House gift shop, hence the shop's slogan, "Take a little horror home with you." The book structure itself is different from that of the Enter Horrorland arc, as those books contain the main story, an Enter Horrorland section, and a Fear Files section. The Chiller arc stories also have 3 parts but are different. Part 1, where the protagonist purchases the gift shop items, Part 2, where the protagonist must survive the horrors they purchased, and an epilogue where the protagonist finds a little doll resembling a horror, and Chiller himself appears, stating that more is to come. The books in this section include When the Ghost Dog Howls, Little Shop of Hamsters, Heads You Lose, Weirdo Halloween, a special edition with extra pages featuring much more of Jonathan Chiller, The Wizard of Ooze, and Slappy New Year, which reused the title from the scrapped Goosebumps Gold series, but had a different and surprisingly violent story. Then, in the final book of the Horrorland series, The Horror at Chiller House, Jonathan Chiller, the gift shop owner, decides to try to force the kids into playing a game for him, and they, just like the special guests from the first half of the series, must survive the game and escape Horrorland. After the smashing success of the original 12-book Horrorland series and its subsequent second arc, Stein was again contracted to write 6 additional books for the series, bringing the total from the original 12 to 19 to now 25. This series was originally titled Goosebumps Horrorland Hall of Horrors, and then rebranded to just Goosebumps Hall of Horrors, where once inside Horrorland's Hall of Horrors, located deep within the park, a horror named the Storykeeper would hear the horror stories of the children who visited. This series consisted of Claws, Night of the Giant Everything, The 5 Masks of Dr. Scream, Why I Quit Zombie School, Don't Scream, and The Birthday Party of No Return, with the standout being 5 Masks. This series was the first in the Horrorland series to not have an overarching arc, aside from the very small section at the beginning of the stories, returning the books to the original Goosebumps anthology format. While sometimes the Horrorland series stories, whether it be the main story typically shortened to 100 pages or less instead of the normal page count of around 120 to 30, or the Horrorland sections themselves typically only around 30 pages, could seem convoluted or rushed, there is no doubt that the Goosebumps Horrorland series' interconnected plots, as well as iconic Goosebumps characters like Carly Beth and the Morrises meeting, helped to revive the Goosebumps franchise, and did it horrifyingly well. This was also in part due to the games. While the Horrorland series could stand the test of time all on its own, there were 2 tie-in Horrorland games released alongside the books that no doubt helped to push the Horrorland series further into the eyes, and hands of course, of kids and fans across the US and across the world. On the back of the books and inside, there were many messages reading something along the lines of, "This book is your ticket to enter Horrorland.com." Naturally, as a kid, you'd go search that up and hope you wouldn't be crashing your elementary school's computer lab with a vicious virus from a random link. Luckily, what came up was arguably even scarier than a virus. It was Horrorland. This online flash game allowed the player to enter the gates of Horrorland, specifically the version of Horrorland from the series itself. In fact, the in-game map was a perfect representation of the maps in the back of the books, though I am probably the only one psychotic enough to have actually put them all together. In this game, the player is represented as Mr. Wood from the first Night of the Living Dummy book. Madame Doom states that the evil Slappy Dummy has taken over Horrorland, and it's the player's job to defeat him. The game consisted of 12 maps corresponding to each book, where the user plays through each section of the map to progress. For example, the Enter Horrorland section of Revenge of the Living Dummy included a scene where Brittany and Molly were taken on a crazy car ride to arrive at the Stagger Inn. This minigame involved driving a car to the Stagger Inn, attempting to avoid ghosts and other obstacles. If the ectometer hits the top, it's game over. The player can also enter buildings. Once inside the Stagger Inn on Map 1, there are a variety of mini-games to play and puzzles to solve, like Scrabble, an elevator game similar to Frogger, and a musical Simon Says style game. All the while, Madame Doom gives the player hints on how to progress. Not even a fortune-telling ventriloquist dummy like Slappy. Eventually, the player gets to Slappy and has a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter style fight with him. I really enjoyed as a kid, and still enjoy now, the references to other games that the designers used for their minigame blueprints. The other reason why fans adored this Flash game so much was for one simple thing: the music. While Goosebumps has been known for its catchy 90s theme song,
You will beware, you're in for a scare.
has released Halloween audio atmospheric works in the past, and has used cool music in the audiobooks.
Chapter 13. The rest of the day was a blur.
This game has music that is straight up chilling. This music, whether it be the main title page music, the Mind Stealer music, cafe elevator style music, or amazing slingshot stage music, and more, no doubt brought this version of Horrorland to life. The other areas consisted of Quicksand Beach, Vampire Village, and other locations, each referencing a section of the book series. The main villains for each map section also reference the books, such as Monster Blood, The Haunted Mask, and The Haunted Camera. Some of the games are really neat and fun, like this Monster Slingshot game. While I recall some of the mini-games not functioning correctly when I was a kid, there was always the option to play the Find the Eyeball minigame to skip the minigame that was either glitching out or too difficult to beat. After beating the minigames on map 12, the player would go on to fight Slappy one last time and win the game. According to fans online, the player would then be given access to a map editor. I personally got to the last fight with Slappy, but was never able to beat it. Unfortunately, while a lot of the game footage is still preserved online, and there was a version of the game with missing assets made available at reenterhorrorland.com, there is currently no known footage recorded of some of the Map 12 minigames, or Battle with Slappy. The Enter Horrorland URL began redirecting fans to the Scholastic website around 2009, and though I remember being able to play the game throughout 2nd grade from 2010 to 2011, the site permanently deactivated the game soon after, and developers at Scholastic have reported that the original game files were completely deleted. If anyone has footage from the 12th map, I, along with other fans of the game, urge you to share it on YouTube or with the creator of the reenterhorrorland.com domain. I try to keep these videos somewhat professional, but cool stuff like this needs to be preserved in some way as much as possible. So I want to use my platform, though small, to hopefully help this process along. EnterHorrorland.com was a cool way for fans of the book series to interact with the characters and storylines like never before. Though the majority of the game is no longer playable in any way, it will live on forever in die-hard fans' hearts.
Slappy, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's my pleasure. It's so nice to be here on Horrorland TV. There's nowhere else I'd rather be than with you.
Well, that is nice to hear. It's been rumored that there are some menacing things happening there.
No, really? Menacing things? I simply can't imagine. Like what?
We hear that some of the rides are actually quite dangerous, and that some of the Horrorland staff is really up to no good.
What? Never. Please believe me, this is not at all the truth. The Horrorland staff has a a strict code of conduct. I give you my word. Let's shake on it.
Ow, that hurt!
Oh, did it? I'm so sorry. Yes.
Okay, Slappy, many would say you've got some anger issues. Where does that anger stem from? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there something on my... Wait, what are you...
Prepare for a case of the chills, the willies, the heebie-jeebies, the boogity-woogities. Prepare for Goosebumps Horrorland, the video game. Experience your own Goosebumps adventure in an all-new story as you try to escape from a frightening amusement park. Make your way through 5 different themed areas of the park. Discover, unlock, and play 30 games. And if you can make it to the end, you're in for a shocking surprise. Jump into the all-new Goosebumps adventure.
Tickets, please.
The Horrorland Wii game was also released in 2008 as a soft tie-in with the series. The game was released on the Nintendo DS, Wii, and PlayStation 2. In my opinion, it is best experienced on the Wii, because the motion controls really help bring Horrorland to life. The game begins when the player and his friend get invited to the Horrorland theme park and gleefully enter the gates.
Woohoo!
Tickets, please.
Great costume.
Thanks. Same to you.
Hey!
Looks like you're in.
The player goes through each section of the park using tokens to play minigames. Starting off in the Carnival of Screams, the minigames consist of a variety of different styles, such as a bumper car style game, a test your strength game called Dead Ringer,
Can you ring my bell? 10! Dead Ringer!
a derby style game, target practice, and a challenging roller coaster. Once the player meets the so-called fright restriction by getting a high enough score on the majority of the minigames, they're allowed to move on to the next area of the park.
Wanna sink your teeth into Vampire Village?
The other areas consist of Vampire Village,
Looks like you made the fright restriction. No more kiddie rides for you.
Fever Swamp, Mad Labs, and Terror Tombs. There are a variety of minigames in each, with highlights being the Wheel of Misfortune,
Take a flying leap onto the wheel of misfortune, win a fortune in frights, or an unfortunate fall. 200 points!
The Garlic Crusher, a neat game where the player stops vampires from sucking their blood by launching garlic at them. The Batting Cage.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Coffin Cruise.
Watch out for floating coffins. You never know who might be napping inside.
Roller Coaster, which for some reason replaced the Doom Slide, though it was fun.
Won't you stay for dinner?
Anchors Away, which was a lot like the Scottish Highland game's Caber Toss.
Yarr! That was a mighty, mighty throw!
The Bogtopus, where the player has to survive a huge bog monster. The Brain Drain. And a kart racing game, the Scorpion Speedway. After surviving enough Horrorland rides, the player receives a piece of their ticket. In order to escape Horrorland, the player must collect each piece of the ticket, one for each area of the park. There are references to other Goosebumps characters like the Haunted Mask, where the player puts on a horror mask and turns into a horror. This allows the player to access a horrors only area to collect a piece of the ticket.
Stop right there! I know who you are, imposter!
You're evil. This whole place is
Evil? What's so bad about that?
Eat my dust, Horrifico.
Throughout the game, there are many references to a monster called the Great Gargantua, a huge, demonic-looking creature that Horrifico, the creator of the Carnival of Screams, puts on a show with.
I had a little trouble with my main attraction, the Great Gargantua.
A little trouble?
Yes, she, decided to take a break.
But I don't see her anywhere.
Don't be fooled, human. In Horrorland, things are not always what they seem to be.
Once inside Vampire Village, the player sees a little girl named Gigi stuck on the roller coaster ride and saves her. They are then chased by the monster police.
Hand over the girl.
Run!
But why? Why do the monster police want to capture this little girl? After beating the final minigame, the monster police and Horrifico himself throw the kids onto a ride called Certain Death.
Don't forget to have fun.
Once the ride is beaten, the player, the friend, and Gigi all break through the wall of the ride, finally freeing them from Horrorland. Then it is revealed that Gigi was the Great Gargantua all along and seeks to
Make the whole world my Horrorland.
The game overall had alright graphics, music, and minigames, while the general story was somewhat weak, and the minigames, aside from the standouts previously mentioned, were nothing exceptional. The Horrorland game was fun and somewhat challenging as a kid, and no doubt helped to cement the Horrorland concept and book series further into the positive graces of Goosebumps fans. Aside from the video games, there was surprisingly little other merchandise released surrounding the series. As mentioned, there were audiobooks released for the series, as well as bookmarks likely sold at Scholastic book fairs. Most of the bookmarks, however, were themed based on classic series reprints, rather than the Horrorland series itself. The Write Your Fright book was released shortly after the Horrorland series concluded. This was a journaling, do-it-yourself type book that was popular at that time, where the reader, or writer in this case, would finish 6 of the Horrorland series stories. It featured a cool locking mechanism on the top that contained a laughing audio sample. Scholastic also released a How to Draw Goosebumps book that included full-color, step-by-step guides on how to draw characters like Slappy, the werewolf, and Scarecrow. I got my copy at my elementary school's Scholastic book fair one year. I miss those simpler times. Interestingly, this art style was very different from the style of both the original Jacobus artwork and the Dorman works from the classic Goosebumps reprints and Horrorland series at the time of this release. This style seemed to act as the standard Scholastic art for the characters in advertisements, showing up on the Scholastic website and Netflix cover art for the Goosebumps 90s show.
It's dark up there. You go first.
Goosebumps, now on DVD. Every spine-tingling story is so good, it's scary. Goosebumps. You can own all 3 DVDs today, each sold separately.
In 2004, episodes from the 90s Goosebumps television show were re-released on DVD. The box art resembled the 2003 reprint format and used the classic Jacobus art. Around the release of the classic Goosebumps series and the Horrorland book series, episodes of the show once again saw DVD releases. This time, the artwork appeared more realistic and frightening. The early 2000s DVD releases contained only 2 episodes per disc, while the later releases contained 3 to 4. Other countries saw full series box set releases, and though they can be ordered and imported, the United States has never gotten an official full series release. Nevertheless, owning the Goosebumps physical media was just another cool way to bring the iconic franchise into one's home and give their whole family goosebumps. Clue made a Horrorland-themed version of the game, featuring the same awesome rendering of Slappy as seen on the Revenge of the Living Dummy book cover. The game featured Luke and Lizzie from the series as characters, as well as classic Horrorland attractions like the Coffin Cruise and Doomslide. There was also an official Horrorland board game, very similar to the Clue game, released in 2012 to celebrate 20 years of Goosebumps. Perhaps the coolest promotional Goosebumps release in the time between the Goosebumps 2000 series and Horrorland series was a real-life Slappy doll. The original version of the doll, manufactured by the Goldberger Doll-Making Company, was a Slappy replica with a pull-string mouth and floppy body. ThrowThings.com then altered the doll to produce many different incarnations, such as the one with actual hair that barely resembled Slappy at all, and others that had moving eyes. These, unlike the original version of the doll, actually functioned properly as ventriloquist dummies, with a hard wooden body under the clothing and a lever to move the mouth. The most popular incarnation was the version of Slappy that I was gifted for Christmas as a kid from my wonderful parents. This version most closely resembled the original design of the Goldberger doll, but contained the wooden body and internal lever to move Slappy's mouth, like a true ventriloquist dummy. Bringing Slappy into one's home no doubt helped to bring Goosebumps to life, and maybe even insert Slappy with his glow-in-the-dark eyes directly into your nightmares. Goosebumps Horrorland was a series many fans might not have expected, especially after learning of the cancelled Goosebumps Gold series. However, the time spent between Series 2000 and the Horrorland series was used well, and used to craft interconnected storylines, lore, and much world building to truly bring the iconic Horrorland theme park and characters to life. Stein's new series was a hit amongst fans, prompting not 1, but 2 contract renewals, bolstering the 12-book series to 25. The series itself revitalized Goosebumps and might just be fans' favorite series. Horrorland might be where nightmares come to life, but the series itself made fans' dreams come true. Hey, thanks for joining me in my look back at the Goosebumps Horrorland series. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you leave a like. Feel free to comment your favorite Goosebumps Horrorland entry in the description, and also make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. And I will see you guys next time.